Hi, I'm Ernesto Cervini. I'm a Canadian drummer and composer from Toronto, Ontario. Growing up, I was exposed to all kinds of music, from jazz to pop, classical to music theater. My influences were super varied. My siblings and I made music together all the time, and we were part of a band now known as the Toronto All-Star Big Band. Our next guest is the president and CEO for the Canadian Music Centre, located in downtown Toronto. Her work includes the arts, children, youth and families, youth leadership, and community engagement. She's passionate about the power of music in one's life and about empowering youth to be the best they can be. Please welcome Holly Nimmons.
Hi, I just would like to add that our head office is in Toronto, but we are right across the country.
Thank you for doing this.
It's a pleasure.
I have many questions.
Okay.
So the idea with this podcast is we're talking to different musicians and people who work in the arts just about how they got to where they are in terms of growing up in Canada in a life of music, basically. Your father, Phil, has been mentioned by many, and of course, I'm one who counts him as a huge influence in my life as well. Where were you born, and how did music come into your life?
I was born in Toronto, Ontario, and I think I was born through into music. I'm not so sure that music came into my life. I think I sort of was born out of it. And right. I would say music is creating music and loving music. It's just in my DNA. So, yeah, that's certainly, there are early stories about the big band. So my father's obviously Phil Nimmons, and the big band would rehearse and I'd be in the bassinet beside the band. Like that's how in the music I was, Ernesto.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But most people think that Phil would be my major influence for music. But in fact, my mother was, in many ways, more of a sustaining influence around music in the earlier years, and certainly throughout until I became a teenager and moved out of the house. But my mom was a remarkable musician and a great pianist. She was going to be a concert pianist. So I grew up listening to classical and jazz and all sorts of interesting experimental music in between. So I had all of that. It was not just Phil.
So did you study piano?
I studied piano with my mom. I studied clarinet, flute. I studied a lot of things, but those were my major instruments. Not B flat. I played bass clarinet. I was going to distinguish myself.
It's funny because my son plays drums, and I kind of don't want him to. But he's really good. But I want him to do his own thing. Plus, then we can't play together. I want to play with him. And if he plays drums, then...
Exactly. Well, my mom played flute, so she would play piano and I'd play flute or flip it. And I did lots of, double hands piano stuff with her. And oh my gosh, yeah. I never actually played piano with my dad, though.
Really?
Where he would play music. No. My son did. I mean, Sean, my oldest son, played a lot. But growing up, no. More dad and mom would play. Mom would play piano and dad would play clarinet. And we'd all dance and be silly. So
that sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, there was a lot of music growing up. A lot of music. Yeah.
Do you have siblings?
I have a younger sister and a younger brother.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And are they also involved in the arts?
My brother was earlier on. He studied drums, and he was also very involved in high school music, as well as I think he worked with Boddington's years ago as well. My sister, not so much.
But they were also probably learning when they were growing up.
I think we learned by osmosis.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that my mom and dad were the first of their circle to have children. So, and they got a house. So everybody came to our house. And we were like the golden children. But, you had all of their friends at the house and they'd have a party and they'd get very partied up and they'd jam and there'd be just lots and lots of music and sharing of, LPs and music that people had heard. And yeah.
You're playing all this music and through high school, you're continuing to play? I'm assuming.
You know, high school was, I went to Thornley Secondary School, which was at the time an alternative school, and they were trying out a bunch of things. And we had really fascinating teachers in every subject area. So in the music area, we at one point had Ellis McClintock, and Charlie LaPointe was another one. And they were amazing teachers. And, you know, I was in the band, of course, and we did musicals, and it was very, very active. And the other thing I remember in high school was that Nimmons at 9+6 was supported by CBC at the time, and would go around and spend a day at a high school, and they do a clinic with music students, and then they do a show for the whole school. And I remember that was kind of exciting, because at that point Phil was. They were on CBC all the time, so he was sort of a household name at that point. But we also had, it was a time where, you know, Edward Bear was coming to our school and playing, and, you know, all these Canadian rock bands were coming and playing at our school. So there was a lot more access to music that was happening, and yeah, and I remember, and we had an amazing theater teachers as well. And I actually ended up going into theater instead of music after school.
Okay, so tell me about that. Where did you go for theater?
I auditioned for the National Theatre School and went to Montreal to the National Theatre School. And I'm really happy that I did that for many reasons. One is I'm not acting right now. And but what I learned, and having my improv background from Phil and music and whatnot, was a really interesting synergy of various skills that I had been absorbing over time. So I find that the theater now, I have no trouble getting up and speaking in front of audiences, or listening to the messages that people are saying, or, you know, synthesizing something that's happening in a meeting. These are all skills that I learned as an actor, but also growing up with musicians, you learn in a different way as you listen to the music.
Yeah.
So that led to many things. I mean, out of National Theatre School, I went to New York City, and I lived there for a little while. And when I came back, I got very involved in community activism, and specifically for midwifery. And because I had acting training, I was the spokesperson for the consumers, right? And one thing led to another. So I look back on this sort of serendipity of my life that leads to here. So I have a lot of empathy for the children and grandchildren of well-known musicians, because that's a hard gig to follow, you know, especially if they're great.
Did you have any other influential music teachers, or just teachers in general, when you were studying through high school and through university?
Yes, definitely those two music teachers that I mentioned. And the first teacher was very hippie, very relaxed. And yet it was a fulsome band that he was conducting. And he brought in all sorts of other influences. So I was lucky to hear, and I'm going to forget these names, you know, Frank Zappa, and, I want to say Maharaj. No, that's John Maharaj. Who am I thinking
Mahavishnu?
about? Yes, the stuff that John will be very happy that I made that link with him. But he brought in all sorts of different references for us. And then he deconstructed the Beatles with us, you know.
Oh, cool.
Yes, and he was like, you know, and he went into the classical aspects and the jazz parts and the improv and the overlaying, and it was very interesting studying with him. And then Ellis McClintock was a straight-ahead band leader, and we had really structured, high-quality professional band. I recall that. And, you know, we would go and play at places. But I was really taken by the theater arts teachers, and I was given a lot of opportunities there to study and to do extra work, and then to be in plays. So that was that really sort of took over, because then I could distinguish myself in that family and not have to follow the music thing. So that's what took me to the National Theatre School.
That's awesome. So
Really?
so then what was it that kind of pushed you into this lifelong goal of advocacy and even because you said with midwifery, that was when you came back to Toronto, that's what you kind of got into first?
Injustice, I think, and inequities, really, that I've always had a very strong sort of compass about. And I believe I learned that from my mom and dad. I really think I learned that from early days with the musicians who were, in those conversations at dinners, Harry Friedman, Oscar, all those people. So I learned a lot about injustices at the time. So that's one thing. But the other thing, and I have said this a few times, is I grew up with the experience of understanding, believing, and experiencing the power that one person can have on many, or for many. Like, just saying, Phil, just your experience, and there are thousands of people like that, and generations, over generations. That's huge, and I find that the impact of that on us in our communities and in our societies to be massive, and music teachers are doing that every day. I also had the great pleasure to work with Chris Hadfield, and I saw the impact that somebody who takes on a leadership role can have, influencing people, modeling behavior, strong values around working collaboration. You don't command the International Space Station if you haven't developed skills, and if you aren't going to find a way to work well with a team. And guess what? He went to music school. And they did a class trip when in high school, and they went to Manta Sound and heard Phil's band recording Atlantic
really?
Suite. I mean, yeah, he put that together, sent me an email from space about it. But I find that that's really quite interesting. And then look at, just what you're doing here. You have a lot of chutzpah. You have a lot of ideas, a lot of vision. And I think that I have this experience of people learning a craft, accepting levels of leadership, feeling it, and then acting on it. And it has an impact on community. And really, social change has happened with leaders coalescing groups of people around ideas that resonate for those communities, and then change happens. So I think I learned a lot I've always been very curious, and I learned to listen, and I learned to synthesize from my background. And that's, when you look backwards, it's a natural thing for me to get into community advocacy work.
I'm very glad that you are and did, and I'm so thrilled that you're at the CMC now. That's so great.
And now I'll make a leap to the world I'm in today, which is people will call up the Canadian Music Centre and say, we want some Canadian music on our program. What do you recommend? And we have an amazing manager of music services who will say, well, how about? So I like this thing of service. I'm serving communities, serving, the positive, the optimistic in me. I think I learned that from Phil too.
What kind of music did you listen to when you were growing up? What was your favorite bands? What were you
I
into?
loved funk. I loved the Beatles, obviously. I loved Frank Zappa, Earth, Wind and Fire, Manhattan Transfer. I absolutely loved, I can see him, Al Jarreau. Loved that man. Chicago, loved Chicago. So I loved a lot. I'm trying to think. I'm reaching back. That's a while ago. And then I had when I lived on my own and had a turntable and everything, I would get Deutsche Grammophon recordings of really fine musicians. And I remember listening to piano concertos and Mahler. I was going to say Wagner, but I didn't like Wagner, but Mahler and Beethoven. And I would lie on the floor and just listen to that music as a way to sort of shift a headspace. And yeah, I listened to a lot. It was really quite eclectic. And then, when I went to Manhattan and lived there, it was a real disco scene. So, all Donna Summers and all the disco stuff was big too. But, I grew up with those guys. I listened to Oscar, a lot of Oscar, and I had to listen to Nimmons in 9+6, which I liked. It wasn't always my favorite, but I loved it, obviously. And Miles Davis, and I listened to a lot. But I started shifting the way I liked a lot of alternative stuff at the time. So I was really into Frank Zappa when I was younger. His whole all of his other messages I liked too. And then, eventually when you have kids, so I have 2 sons, adult sons now, but when they were younger, I started, I've always wanted to know what happens in a young person's life. And I got that from my parents for sure. So I wanted to know what was their world, what were they listening to? Because I felt it helped me understand who they were in that world. So, Eminem. I remember when Eminem hit the scene, and Rage Against the Machine. I still love a good Rage Against the Machine song.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Beastie Boys. Loved all that stuff. Loved it.
Yeah.
Still do. Yeah. Try and
great.
keep me sitting if it goes on. I'm forgetting Joni Mitchell. Oh my God, Joni Mitchell and David Bowie also, really. Every Joni Mitchell thing ever happened, it was like she expressed who I was as a young woman growing up. But, my youngest son, Sasha, was really into heavy metal for quite a while, played it, and, death metal. It was a real push for me. But again, I learned from my dad, which was to be curious about it. So I asked him about the music, and because I said, no drummer can play that fast, right? There's something happening. So then he explained to me, German and Finnish bands and how certain drums, the drum kits and, triple drumming and all sorts of stuff. He explained all this stuff to me. And then I didn't like a lot of the guitar playing, but then he explained shredding and, pulling and all these different things. And so, as I experienced with Phil, when he deconstructed the Beatles songs, I started to understand the music differently, and I actually had an appreciation for it. It was like, okay.
Yeah, it is good once you start to understand things, that it can make a little more sense and a little less just like noise.
Yeah, they're just. Even now, there's a lot of contemporary music. 'Cause I'm turning my head, like I call it the puppy head tilt, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't. And then I always find when I ask somebody about it, what am I listening to? What am I not hearing that you're hearing? And I think that's really important.
Well, and I think for a lot of people, jazz has that too, right? Where people go, I just don't understand it. Like, I don't have any idea what's going on, and often the first thing I say to them is, don't try and understand it. just listen. Listen to the sounds. Don't try and dissect it, because you'll drive yourself crazy. Just let it happen. And don't worry about it.
Then, are you listening to the music or are you experiencing the music?
Right.
Right? And I think that's an interesting difference, because you're reminding me of something that I'm sure I learned again through jazz, which is I love from a management perspective.
Yeah.
I like chaotic theory. It's a management theory. So it is exactly like what it sounds like, between chaos and order. So it's a natural way the environments and systems, they're ordered, and then something happens and they break into chaos, and then chaos starts to order itself. And there's richness in many all order and all chaos is not, can only handle it for a while, and then the system changes. It's around us every day in our environment, in families, in work. It's just, and so I love chaotic theory, and I think that's jazz. I think I learned that from jazz. That there's a head, and then let's go, everyone, and then it comes back, right? And the thing about free jazz or improv, because Phil and David Braid ended up doing that quite a bit, right? Is you just have to suspend the coming back to order. Although I think it does come to order in some way, you just don't. You need to get your judgment out of the way and feel it.
For sure, because I mean, even in free jazz, the musicians are still listening to each other. It's either contrasting what's happening or supporting what's happening. But it's always a conversation.
Yes, and I would say for me, the translation to community and advocacy work is exactly that. Some are supporting, some are pulling, it's a conversation. Some have a stronger feeling, some less feeling, some see things I haven't seen yet. It's like it's an alchemy that's very similar to music, with people working, playing their instruments, and you can see it in community meetings. There's different passions, different abilities, different skill, and I love that. I love what can get ordered and come out of that. So, for example, we've just come through the pandemic, and musicians have been hit hard. Artists have been hit hard. AI, streaming, it just goes on and on and on. And I kind of feel a new passion now because you can't pull me away from supporting music and musicians. So, what do we do as a community now? To support our musicians and support the creative process for creating music. What needs to happen now?
It's a big question.
Well, and I'm up for it. You know what? I'm up for it, man. Like, I'm up for listening and learning to as many people as possible. And then with an established organization like CMC, how do we work together? Because we have great value as musicians in this country, composers in this country. And I, for one, believe really strongly in y'all. So I'm like, what are we going to do? Come out of the gate fast.
That's what we need. I mean, having someone like you in our corner and advocates, because honestly, sometimes musicians aren't great at advocating for themselves.
Nor should they be. No, I'm serious. I think, why? I mean, I watched the process of a composer from early synapses, right? That's growing up. I saw what happens, and it's a different way of thinking to be an advocate, to be an arts administrator or an arts leader. It's a different way of thinking, and I think we're wrong to expect our musicians and artists to do both. And that happened. Phil was very strong about this. He thought, let the students be students, let the artists be artists. And he could never have excelled without my mother's strong administrative support for him. I just think it's not fair that we expect musicians to write the music, get the musicians, pay for the musicians, pay to be heard, get the album out, also find their messages, be their own advocates.
Write the grant application,
It's too much.
It's a lot.
I think it sort of sucks the soul out of you after a while. And then you write the grant report, and what you really just want to say, it was fantastic, thank you. As opposed to giving all of the, I understand the data points, I get it, but still, I don't think it's right to expect musicians to be advocates and administrators, but support those who do on your behalf. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, certainly.
Right?
Certainly, yeah.
If people are going to take up a mantle and really push hard for the profession you're in, no matter what it is, midwifery, music, arts, support those who do.
So do you have any exciting initiatives that you can talk about that you're planning with the CMC moving forward?
Yeah, Yeah, we have, there are many things on the books. I mean, one thing we have is this distribution label called Center Discs, and we're very, very active. And that is the only label in the world that's 100% Canadian music, so Canadian composers. So that's I'm very excited about that. There's some really wide spectrum of music that's being released through Center Discs. We have a youth program that we are getting off the ground, and it's an interesting experience. It's called The Story of Us, and it is a sound creation project. So it's working with young people, and they consider their personal stories. They learn to listen. They tune their ears, as R. Murray Schafer used to talk about, and they learn how to go on discovery walks and discover sounds and grab found sounds, and they use their task cans, and then they come together and they create a storyboard of the sounds and their personal stories, and then they create the story of us, and they create the soundscape. And it's very, very exciting. They work with a composer who helps them learn how to find sounds in their environment, and they work with other people to facilitate what is the story that speaks of them in their environment, in their communities, and then to create the storyboard. So it's very exciting. In the pilot project, a young boy at the beginning of the project said, "I don't want to become a composer." I was like, "Okay." At the end of the project, he said, "I still don't want to become a composer, but I'm hearing things differently." And that for me, again, like, you don't have to become a musician, but maybe we listen to the world around us and we learn. So that's one thing. Listen and Learns, those are gatherings across the country to help us fashion the next strategic plan for the CMC, but also because we have ethical protocols for guidelines for collaborating with Indigenous artists and with musicians and artists from equity-seeking communities. So we have a lot of work that we're doing around accountability for change. The CMC is an old organization that comes out of settler times. And so we're definitely responsible for decolonization and embracing all cultures and all communities. The Listen and Learns will be quite, I love that, as you probably could guess. And we have a documentary that has been developed by the Indigenous Advisory Council, and that's looking at their experience of going through the catalog at the Canadian Music Centre and finding music that was appropriated from Indigenous song and story. So those are a few things. We have, the CMC is a generative organization, so we're generating opportunities for composers. We have emerging composer work. We have commissions. There's the Phil Nimmons Legacy Fund, and that's going to be doing commissions. We'll be commissioning a jazz composition, and a lot of work to sponsor organizations, not always in an urban setting, but to sponsor music ensembles that are playing Canadian music. So in BC, for example, this program's really taken off, and in Ontario, our director was up saying Timmins, and Sudbury, they were doing an ensemble that was playing Canadian composers. So ways to support them in that. Oh, there's so much, actually. There's so much.
That's so great. Oh my gosh, it's so lovely to hear.
I'm just grabbing things, but that's the beginning, Ernesto. I started as the CEO in January of this year, 2024, so watch out.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait. I was so excited when I heard that you were taking on that role. And
thank you. But the reason why I'm excited about it, though, to be really clear, is because there are remarkable people on the ground in regions across the country. So, and I'm just passionate about that synapsis and the amazing music that's being written across the country. So, it's
well,
worth
and
it.
as you said, it's really nice to have people advocating on your behalf for and people who are very passionate, and which obviously you are.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, Holly, thank you so much for doing this and
You're
for chatting
welcome.
with me. And, I know that you and I will be working together on all sorts of
yes.
projects, I'm sure, in the future. And but yeah, well, just once again, thank you for everything you're doing for music in Canada. And we'll talk to you soon.
Great. Thanks so much for the time, Ernesto. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.